All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to talk to you today. It is Monday, May 6th. Arlen, good morning to you. Good afternoon to me. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, thank you. The weather, it was rainy the other day, but now the sun's out and I don't think we'll have any rain for a while. So it's quite pleasant outside at the moment. So I'm happy, and I did my exercise class already. So I'm pumped.
All right, that's awesome. So you're really all raring to go. Get us going this morning, at least in California. Again, time shifting. That's the wonders of media that we can do this. You in California, me in Maryland, and we don't miss a beat. So we're excited to talk about some of our favorite and least favorite things. That's the theme for today's program. And Arlen, I've sort of been talking a little bit about this woman in recent shows. So actually, I said it, so I got a billboard. There's Taylor Swift, and I put a halo on one image on the left and the devil horns on the right. And the reason I got that, did you know, and I said, we're going to talk about other people too, and talk about Trump, who's certainly beloved by many in America and completely reviled and despised by others. We'll talk about taxes a little bit. I actually am not so angry at the IRS as maybe some of you, and dogs. I think most of us love the little puppy dog. It's really hard to find too many people who don't, but at least one U.S. governor shot her dog, and she's getting a lot of heat for that, Arlen. So some of our favorite and least favorite things. I didn't realize that, and I don't know if you did, that there are a lot of people who really hate. There are a lot of Taylor Swift haters out there, Arlen. Did you know that?
Probably not that many. Maybe in the particular place you were at the elementary school, that was the case. But, hey, if you want to buy a ticket to one of her concerts, you better have a lot of money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, money talks, and it talks very loudly in her case. But I did go to, there you see it, the school, Whetstone Elementary School. I was given a great, warm, loving greeting on Friday, and I spoke to the fifth graders about my career, let me put it in air quotes, as a live streamer. They were mostly really interested. There was a little chitter chatter, but I remember when I was a fifth grader too. So they certainly were as well behaved as I could have expected. But when I brought up Taylor Swift, I figured they would perk up at her name since she's so popular, or at least well known. There were a lot of kids putting their fingers down like this and grimacing and booing. I was really quite surprised by that.
I'm going to make a guess that it was probably the boys who had their thumbs down, and the girls probably had their thumbs up, because it seems like she's very popular with girls, I think, more than boys.
Mostly you're right, but there were some girls who didn't like her much either. So the reason I brought this up and I mentioned it to you is because it kind of sent to me a real message about why I have been struggling to get a big audience. And I like your take on this as well, because I think more than a lot of people, and we've discussed this, I see shades of gray. So maybe not with the Democratic Party, but even with the Democrats, I actually see some not awful things, right, in the Democratic Party. And I think this is a real problem because most folks see the Democrats, see the Republicans see Donald Trump the way I portrayed Taylor Swift in this picture. Either she's perfect, she's an angel, or she's got the devil horns. And I don't see it that way. I mean, I think she does a nice sort of PG-rated performance, and her lyrics are not obscene. I think she comes across as a good role model, responsible, treats her employees well. On the other hand, I don't think her voice is anything special. She does use the auto-tune. I think it's pretty innocuous, the lyrics. So by saying that, I'm going to totally turn off the Swifties who will hate me as soon as I say her voice isn't the greatest since, ever. And if I say something positive about her, then the Swift haters will come after me. So I feel like I can't win in this medium.
Yeah. As far as your popularity and why you're not like really soaring up in listeners and all that, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're kind of all over the place politically. You're hard to peg down. You're not a totally progressive liberal. You're not a ultra conservative. You have positions on several different top things on all kinds of topics. And maybe, that's the difference, because those who are, really all right wing, they're going to listen to their favorite shows, and those who are very progressive are going to listen to their favorite shows, and maybe people don't like being in the middle there. So
yeah, I don't think it's that I'm exactly in the middle. I think it's more that I see the good and the bad, the yin and the yang, in a lot of very polarizing figures and characters and institutions. And I think that's the problem. I mean, as you said off air, maybe you can expound on this, we've really chosen up sides, right? We're either on Team Blue or Team Red, although you're ironically on Team Blue, and yet you're arrayed rather brilliantly in red today, Arlen.
Well, my Vermont hat was red, and I had a red shirt on, so I just thought they would be, color coordinated at least. But yeah, fortunately, Vermont is a blue state. Bernie Sanders says he's going to run for senator again. I'm glad to hear that. And what's another thing that's surprising? I don't know if you heard this or not, but Howard Dean wants to run for governor of Vermont, which is really a difficult thing to do because the Republican governor they have now is very moderate and very popular. So I'm not sure why Dean is running, if he thinks he has a chance, but it'll be an interesting election there.
Yeah, well, that's one person I would never vote for at this point. I think he's taken millions from for-profit healthcare, and he would be doing everything possible to prevent Vermont from returning to some kind of government system for guaranteeing good healthcare for all of its citizens. So he's certainly not somebody I would support at this point. I think he's been a real disappointment, and the current Republican governor, I guess, is pretty moderate, so I wouldn't be a fan of his either. It's interesting what you said about me being kind of all over the place. Economically, I'm very, very far to the left. I'm far more progressive, I think, than just about anybody out there in terms of much, much higher taxes on the wealthy, taxing the bads, as I call them, including fossil fuels, imports, and other aspects, other services and goods, I think, that are harmful. So I think economically, I would dispute that there's anyone much to the left of me, although I'm not a socialist. Right? I don't believe in nationalizing everything. So maybe you're right. I'm not a socialist. I think private industry does a good job. Like, for example, they make really good doors. I don't need the government to make doors. And I'm dead serious. Private industry does a lot of things really, really well. I don't want restaurants owned by the government because I think a chef who owns his own place or her own place has got a commitment to delivering quality food, quality meals that maybe an institution like a government would never have. So I'm not in favor of nationalizing everything. I just think government should be much more involved in regulating and kind of forcing the private actors to compete with each other, as well as guaranteeing through tax and spend policies a very high floor and a very low ceiling.
Well, I'll tell you what I like is what Bernie Sanders calls himself. I think AOC calls herself, and I call myself, and that is democratic socialist. I think democratic socialism is maybe where you're at too. It's the fact that we believe in government doing certain things, and at the same time allowing private enterprise to do the things that they do well. So anyway, that's my favorite label.
Don't you think, though, that's a misnomer to call it democratic socialism? Because if it's socialist, then how do you have private actors?
Well, I think it's, a combination, which most countries really have. Almost every country has a little bit of both. They're either socialist in some things or private enterprise in other things. So I think it's a good label, but
no, I agree. I think there's no pure economy. There's no truly capitalist society. I mean, every country regulates its private enterprise to a degree, and there's no pure socialism or communism. Even the old communist Russia, you had, maybe it was a gray market, but you had to have people owning at least possessions. They would feel pride in some of the items that they had handed down from generation to generation. So there was some private property. I guess I just feel like the term socialism and followed by or preceded by democratic doesn't really capture the actual ideology that's that the name represents.
Well, as you know, the right wing has really made socialism a very bad word and almost equating it with communism. So some people, they see the word socialism and they get all freaked out and, we can't have that in this country. But, realistically, anytime the government, is in control of certain things, that's a form of socialism. And like we said, every country has some form of that. And I just think the democratic part is essential too. So democratic socialism is a pretty good term if you have to use a term.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, you make a good point. So if you support, for example, single-payer health care that the government pays for, that's socialist. At least it is if you have a national health service. I'm not sure if I would call Canada's system, where you have individual doctors who work for themselves, who send a bill to the government. Is that truly socialized medicine? It's kind of even that's kind of a hybrid, I guess.
I think all countries have it slightly different. You go to Europe, and each country is a little bit different on how they do that. It's essentially a single payer. The government ends up paying, but there's all kinds of variations apparently, and that's okay.
So, Arlen, our favorite things and least favorite things. I don't think there are too many people who aren't sort of touched, don't have their heartstrings kind of touched when they see these little pooches there that's actually from thebigpicturereport.com. You can see Arlen's website right under his name. So we're going to play a nice video that kind of goes back way in time explaining how important dogs are in politics. But before we do that, I just wanted you to tell us why you posted that at thebigpicturereport.com and explain your caption as well.
Well, obviously, it captured a lot of attention because there's so many dog lovers in this country. And interestingly enough, last night I was listening to one of the talk shows. Which one is this? Anyway, and they were interviewing the governor, and she was just really resisting. She was all over the map. She wouldn't really declare much of anything and tried to avoid everything and made excuses for everything. So she's got a lot of issues.
You're referring to Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, and I've struggled with that. I've gotten that wrong a few times. So just to be real clear, she's got a book coming out, Arlen, and she talked about shooting a dog in that book, and it's really landed her in some pretty hot political water.
By the way, the name of the program I was watching, just remember, was Face the Nation. And, she was talking about not only the interviewer was asking her also about something in the book. She had said she had met the North Korean dictator a couple times, and it turned out she hadn't. So they're having to retract that. She keeps saying, "Oh, well, our book's not coming out for 2 more days, so we'll make the edits." But I don't think she's going to be able to do that in 2 days, make all those new books. So anyway, she made a lot of excuses about that, a lot of excuses about the dog and killing the goat, and she sounded awful, actually.
Oh, I didn't know she had. There was something about her killing a goat as well. By the way, don't forget, we do want you to subscribe. I just moved that subscribe button over so it doesn't cut me off. But please do subscribe and click like if you can. Let's play this. This is from Inside Edition, Arlen. But yes, she discussed killing her dog, and I had a video about why dogs are so important. But since we brought, well, and I'll get to it, I promise. But let's play this first, and I have some thoughts on it.
Kristi Noem is hitting back at the firestorm raging over her shooting her dog to death.
She attacked me, and it was a hard decision.
The South Dakota governor tells Sean Hannity she had to put her dog Cricket down after the animal ate the neighbor's chickens and tried to bite her.
And I had a choice between keeping my small children and other people safe or a dangerous animal, and I chose the safety of my children.
Noem first made the revelation in her new autobiography, No Going Back.
All right, I'll stop it there, Arlen. I've got some more in this video. In fact, we'll get to it when we talk about Trump, because they also do have kind of an interesting conversation about Trump and the trial there, which we're going to get to. But what's so bad about what she just said? I mean, I have to say, I'm like, okay, you have a dog that's aggressive. She says it bit or tried to bite some people. It killed the neighbor's chickens. I mean,
well,
shouldn't she shoot the dog under those circumstances? I mean, it sounds horrible, but if she's got a working farm, the dog's supposed to work and go out and hunt, and it's not doing its job. And not only that, it's killing the neighbor's animals. It seems reasonable to me.
I think she's exaggerating so much. She kept saying, "Oh, the dog was killing all the livestock, or chicken livestock." I guess maybe, but
oh yeah, sure.
No, it's not like cows and bigger animals like that. And yeah, so I think she was making all kinds of excuses, which didn't really sound very good to me. She just make it more, and really the dog didn't go after the children, didn't bite her. You'd think the smart thing would be to give the dog to somebody who could train it. The dog was only 14 months old. It was a young dog, and surely she could do better than just taking it to a gravel pit and shooting it, followed by shooting a goat too.
It sounds very heartless. And the takeaway from the Hill was, if you're going to do this, just don't write it in a book, right? I mean, because people are going to see, and Inside Edition, I mean, they're definitely, playing along with, they're definitely playing, let me say it this way, to the heartstrings of the dog lover. Let me show this. But again, I mean, I'm not loving this. I don't think it was something she should have done necessarily, but I think people who live in the country, if they really have working farms, they have a very different view of animals than we do. They're there to do a job, and if they don't do the job, or they cost you money, you have to get rid of them. I mean, the flip side of that is if you put the dog in a shelter, that's horrible for the dog. I feel terrible for those dogs in the shelters, and many of them are actually ultimately killed. That's why they call some of those shelters kill shelters, Arlen.
Yeah, but you kind of wonder, why did she even put that in the book? Why did she emphasize that? And I think it had to do a lot with she's playing to the base. She thinks, the Republican base is really into guns and being strong. And I think she was playing to Trump. She wants to be his vice president. And I think she went a little too far and made a mistake.
Well, if she was trying to play to her base, I think she made a mistake. I want to show, this is from the movie A Face in the Crowd. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Arlen. That probably is around as old as you are, maybe even a little bit younger. Yeah. Well, it's one of those where they roll you see like a little image, right? And then you see, no, this is from 1957, and you may see an actor that I think we all know, but didn't know, maybe some of us, was in films. So let me get this up for us all, and he's going to tell us about dogs. This is called A Face in the Crowd, and he is he's consulting with a politician who's running for president. So here we go. There's our old friend Andy Griffith, Sheriff Andy Taylor of Mayberry. Let me get the oh yeah. Why are we not? Let's see. We got to get
rating from 4.2 to 51.7. You need now hold on to your hat, my friend. You need a whole new personality.
A new personality? Well, frankly, that's impossible.
Now wait just a moment. For instance, do you have a pet?
My wife and I have a Siamese cat.
Beanie? My public love dogs. One pitch with a hound is worth 10,000 words. That mutt didn't do Roosevelt any harm, did it? Dick Nixon either.
All right, so there's your video. And he's referencing the Dick Nixon, of course, the famous Checker speech, on which you may be familiar with that.
Sure. Yeah, that didn't sound like Sheriff Taylor, that's for sure. He played obviously a different role in that movie.
Well, but his point is still valid, right? You want to embrace dogs if you want to get elected president.
Think of this, Hal, by the way, I was just thinking the other day. Republicans and dogs, like Mitt Romney took his dog on a car.
Well, that was a horse. He's right. The dog was on top of, that's right. That's right. The dog was on the roof of, horrible.
And Donald Trump has never had a dog, has no interest in having a dog, and that's pretty unusual too. So, Republicans and dogs don't necessarily get along too well.
Yeah, and Obama had Bo, of course, and the Portuguese water dog. So the Clintons, though, had Socks, the cat, as I understand. I don't remember them having a dog. So I'm not sure we can go too far with this. I mean, my bigger issue is, and Elia Kazan, who made that movie, not one of my favorites. He named names. He was one of the anti-communists who testified against those he claimed were communists. So he's not one of my favorites. He made a good movie there for sure. He said we shouldn't worry so much about what people say on TV or how good they look or how smooth they are or whether they talk about their dogs. We should look at what they actually do, what their policies are, and look into their rhetoric. So I want to see the media focus on Kristi Noem's policies. They're not good. I mean, that's the bottom line. She refused, she spoke very aggressively against Medicaid expansion and lied about it, Arlen. You mentioned she lied about killing a goat or something.
Also the meeting the North Korean dictator. She, said she met him a couple times and then had to retract that because apparently there's no evidence that she did.
It's a strange thing people. Is that just we all lie, or do you think politicians are especially prone to lying?
I think politicians are especially prone to lying, especially somebody who's trying to come across it and give an image that she's met with all the world leaders and everything like that, and when she really hasn't. People do exaggerate and make themselves to be who they really aren't. Donald Trump.
I think it's such a problem with our political system because every now and then people are caught out, but lots of times the lies are actually rewarded. People lap it up and nobody calls you out. So you get to the point where you start thinking and say anything you like and nobody's going to say boo about it.
It's funny. There was some Republican was saying, well, Joe Biden, we caught him with 150 lies, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, Donald Trump, they calculated over 3,000 lies. I mean, Donald Trump has made a whole career of lying and not telling the truth, and he's done pretty well.
Well, the system reward, as I think that we sometimes lose the thread when we focus only on the lies of our political opponents, because so many times, people, at least on the Democratic side of the aisle, I don't want to say because I don't view them as my allies either, but Hillary Clinton certainly has been caught out in a number of whoppers as well. And that's just one example. So, it's bad. It's really, the system is terrible. And I wish I had an answer. I don't. But this is what I think costs me listeners and viewers, because I agree. Trump is a fundamentally dishonest person. He is a phony populist. He's a right-wing demagogue. He shouldn't be president. But that, to me, doesn't excuse what Democrats do either. And I think that makes it hard for me. This is really bad. So Noem does not support the expansion of Medicaid. Now, talk about lying. This is from 2022 when she ran. A lot of poor people in South Dakota. I know it's not the most impoverished state. A lot of poor people, a lot of rural folks who are hours and hours and hours away from doctors, from the treatment that they need. Medicaid expansion would help that problem. It would allow for some doctors to and clinics to set up in some of the small towns and more rural areas where now they cannot make a living. It would be a real positive, it would be a real boon. Her excuse, Arlen, is that it would cost the state money. But you mentioned that she lies, and she's lying there. The Medicaid expansion is almost completely paid for by the federal government.
Yeah.
And even though it is true that the state might have to pick up some of the costs early on, those costs might be offset completely by benefits that the state reaps. You can see that. So she's lying, and this is something Republicans have been lying about repeatedly because they don't apparently want poor, struggling, and working people in their states to have health care.
Yeah, when all these red states had the opportunity to take part in Medicaid, they refused, even if it didn't cost them anything, which is terrible for those who are living in that state and could use the healthcare benefits. So it just made no sense, and I imagine a lot of people still resent the fact that that's what they did and cost them the chance to get good health care.
And then there are a couple of reasons. You said it makes no sense. One is from a purely partisan standpoint. They know that this would be perceived correctly as a Democratic program and it would help the Democratic Party. And since we have a binary political system, anything that helps the Democrats would correspondingly harm the Republicans. So it's a purely political, it's a cynical, cold-blooded political play that if we Republicans stop people from getting health care, that will actually help us. They'll ironically blame Democrats to a degree. And sadly, it appears that they may well be right. So there's that. And I think there is a certain ideological commitment or bias against any kind of government program that helps the people. There may be some belief, some kind of twisted view that this is actually better for people to be on their own and for children and moms and seniors not to, or people who aren't, below Medicare age or who don't qualify for Medicare. Some seniors don't qualify for Medicare. For those folks not to get health care, there may be some cynical belief that it's better if they're on their own, or survival of the fittest, cull the herd. There's that. And there's also fealty to the for-profit healthcare corporations that provide them with enormous contributions. And that would be mildly, marginally, maybe harm at the bottom line if the Medicaid expansion went through in their state.
What you're saying is interesting because the Republicans really have nothing positive to point to as far as what they've done. So they seem to be only wanting to make the country look bad, point out all the problems in this country and blame it on the Democrats. And so it's like they're rooting for things to go bad in this country. And that's, a really bad place to be.
I think that's something, though, Arlen, you got to admit both parties do that. I'm sure that when Republicans are in office, Democrats are hoping the economy will tank.
Well, yeah, we that's our political system. It's very adversarial, and that is true too.
All right. So, with regard to Nome, another issue I just wanted to bring to people's attention. The abortion, the repeal of Roe v. Wade, Arlen, may not have really harmed the Democrats politically. We saw in Arizona that the ban there was repealed by the legislature. In Kansas, a statewide referendum failed to make it illegal there in almost all cases. So this is an issue Democrats can organize around. This also could hurt Kristi Noem. Back in 22, she told Dana Bash that she did not think that South Dakota's law, which she supported, which said that except if the life of the mother is at serious risk, under no other circumstances should there be, or the fetus, right? If you're going to give birth and it's going to either kill or likely very dangerous to the mom or the baby, then you can have an abortion. Otherwise, no abortions. She's told Dana Bash that the law shouldn't be changed even because of the possibility that a 10-year-old who had been raped by her father might be forced to deliver the baby. She said, now we shouldn't change the law for just that one isolated type of situation, which, by the way, they're not that rare. This does happen.
Yeah. Well, the one who's really twisted themselves into a knot is the person running for senator, I guess it is, in Arizona. Christy Lake is her name, I think. She's gone all over the map with her views. And, but the good thing for the Democrats is every single election since Roe v. Wade was taken off the books, the Democrats have benefited from it. They've won a lot of off-year elections. And, I think any election that was an issue really has helped the Democrats a lot. And they're hoping it will continually be that way as we go forward.
Do you think from a pure electoral standpoint, the Democrats are making a mistake focusing on Kristi Noem's dog and not on her positions on reproductive rights, on Medicaid expansion, and some of her other very extreme views?
Well, face it, Hal, nobody would even be talking about her at all were it not for what she wrote in the book and the dogs and all that. So, it's really irrelevant.
Well, actually, to be fair, though, I'm just going to cut you off. I think part of the reason she's also in the news is because she has been under serious consideration as Trump's running mate.
Well, quite a lot of Republicans were in that same position, and they're trying to be Trump's vice president. There was a great clip of Tim Scott, the senator from, I think it's North Carolina or South Carolina.
South Carolina. He's a South Carolina senator.
Yeah, and he just would not say whether he would agree with Trump about the stolen election. He just was avoiding it and would not commit one way or another. He just was really squirmy, trying to get, not answer a question.
Do you have any tea leaf reading you can give us as to who Trump is likely to select?
No, I think that'll probably go on for a while, and you never know with Trump. People, if he's upset with somebody, he'll cross them off his list. If he likes what he hears, he'll, be for that person. So, it's really all about Donald Trump, and you never know for sure what he's going to be thinking in the future.
Arlen Grossman with us on Halitics. It's Monday the 6th. Hope to hear from you. If you want to give us a call, 240-242-5646. And don't forget, subscribe. We'd love to talk to you. We're going to get to a few more stories in just a moment, Arlen, but you're basically, you don't have an idea right now, or at least you're not, if you do, you're not going to share it with respect to whom you think would be Trump's pick.
No, I don't think anybody knows. It's impossible to know at this point. But we were talking before we got on the air, Hal, about, I think Biden may have turned a corner looking at some of the recent polling. He's been behind in, all the polls up until recently. This past weekend, there was two major polls that showed Biden ahead by 4 points in one and 5 points in another.
Do you have those? Because I didn't find those. The ones I see have him up by 2 and 1. I agree with you. He's turned a corner, but it seems as though it may not have turned quite as far as you're saying that I can find anyway.
Well, first of all, Real Clear Politics is not one of my favorite sites. I think they lean a little bit to the right, so they may not be showing those particular ones. But I heard on a couple different programs about these two latest polls that show Biden doing quite well. So
I don't disagree with you. Real Clear, I'm not going to dispute that. Real Clear Politics may well have omitted the polls that you're referring to. Here are the ones at RCP. There's the TIP poll showing Biden up by 2 in a head-to-head matchup, which reduces to just 1 point if you include some of the other candidates in the race. There's also an ABC News poll, which I'll show, where there it is. Let me narrow in on that. That came out yesterday, Arlen won. I'm not disputing, and again, you see it narrow with the fourth party candidates involved, Kennedy, RFK, West, and Stein, narrows that gap to actually 0. So I'm not disagreeing with you. There may be some polls that they're not including. I'm just trying to find out what they are. I just like to know. That's the only question I really have.
I wish I knew exactly which ones they were, but they sounded like major ones, from very reputable organizations and news outlets. So I'm sure you can find it if you Google it later on.
I'm going to do that now because usually the polls, Real Clear Politics is pretty strong. For example, they'll have the New York Times, they'll have the Washington Post, they'll have CNN. So I see here from the Hill, Biden tops Trump among light. Okay, so the reason it was the same poll that I already showed you, which was the TIP I poll, which shows Biden 2 + 2. I think that's among all voters. So they just didn't show likely, right? So it's the same poll. It's just among the likely voters, the spread jumps a little bit, and that's understandable. But in any event, your point is well taken. It does appear that Biden is now running either even or slightly ahead of former President Trump. My question to you, Arlen, is why? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think one big reason is what people are able to watch on television and see Trump sitting in the courtroom and squirming and falling asleep, and from what they're saying, farting, and he just looks older and under more pressure. He's saying crazier things, and I think that's got to affect him, and that's going to continue to go on for a while.
Oh, he's an embarrassment. He really is. He embarrasses himself. The fact that he was elected is an embarrassment to our nation, and you and I might disagree about why exactly. I mean, to me, it's an embarrassment that we had the kind of choices that we have, that people would actually, consider voting for him. I think if we had better choices, that wouldn't even be in the ballpark. But regardless, I agree. We've talked about this for a year now, Arlen. I believe it's been a year where we've been saying it's really hard for us to perceive or to imagine the public voting again to elect Donald Trump.
And the sad thing is, most of the country just doesn't like the choice they have now. You've got two old men, and Biden is not very popular. Trump is not very popular, and it's a shame that our system, gives us these kind of choices. But this is who we're going to get.
Well, I don't really see any good choices anywhere. I was saying to my mom over the weekend, when we were discussing Governor DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, that this is an intelligent man. This is a man who went to Yale, he went to Harvard Law School, and I don't always, the university stuff doesn't always mean much to me, but by all accounts, he really he built himself up from the bootstraps. He was a baseball player at Yale, which is something else that does somewhat impress me. That he was able to get really good grades, good enough to get into Harvard Law, and at the same time play a varsity sport in the Ivy Leagues. Is very impressive to me. And yet he's a horrible, miserable person, and his policies in some ways could be even worse than Trump's. So this is what you have. I mean, you have no good options from the Republican Party, and I fear there's not really much in the Democratic Party to look forward to either, Arlen. And on that exact note, my question is are you confident, and I am, but I'm going to ask you, are you confident Kamala Harris will be the vice president if Biden's reelected, and is she the front runner for 28?
Well, she has some problems, and right now her popularity is not as good as it should be. I don't think it's fair. I think she's actually done a pretty good job. But it's interesting. I read an article recently that somebody was saying if Biden lost and she lost, that she would be going after the governorship of California and would have a good chance in 2026. So that's something to think about. But right now,
that seat open? That seat will be open, right? Because Newsom will be term limited out.
That's right. And Biden has pretty much taken over the entire Democratic Party, and so nobody else has been able to put their faces forward and make strong cases for themselves. So we'll just have to wait. But obviously, Biden can't go on forever. He is pretty old, and hopefully the Democrats.
Well, I mean, this is going to be the last race he ever runs. Either win or lose, he's not running for any office after this year. I can't believe if he lost to Trump, I cannot believe he would run again. He's not going to seek a second term in 28, especially because Trump would be term limited out. So I can't see that happening, Arlen.
No, he won't. But Trump would be the kind of person who would go on forever and ever if he could.
Oh, yeah, but if Trump makes himself dictator somehow, which is a fear, I think it's a little overblown, but it's not completely absurd. I mean, it's absurd that he would make himself dictator, but he might, I suppose. But if he did, there wouldn't be an election. I'm just saying, assuming there's an election for president in 4 years, I don't think Joe Biden will be running.
Oh, you could count on that. You're right. I don't think anybody would doubt that.
You wanted to discuss this article, so I'll put it up. But real quick, what about AOC? Do you think she's positioning herself now? She's out there hitting the stump for Biden. She didn't demand anything in return. She didn't use what leverage she might have with younger voters to call for some kind of change in his, tight policy with Bibi Netanyahu. Is she looking at 28 and saying, hey, there's no other head above mine. I can run for president in 28?
I would be surprised. I think she's smart enough to know that it would be really tough to get her elected president. She just wants to have influence, wants to push Democratic Party in a more progressive direction, and she's trying to stay kind of in the mainstream and yet pushing her progressive agenda when she can.
I wish she would push it. I haven't seen her push it. I wish I could believe she had a progressive agenda, because again, I haven't seen her pushing anything. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's a long game. Hey, once I get elected, I'll go back to what I once was. I think the problem is once you become part of the what's the word? There was a word, Leviathan. You can't break free from it. If you're a barnacle on the side of a whale, you can never leave the whale.
Okay.
Become part of its stream, and I think that's what happens with these so-called progressive Democrats.
Well, I'll tell you, I would support her for president. I really like her. I'm a big fan, but then again, I'm a little bit more left-wing than most Democrats, so it would be a tough sell at this point. But hopefully, she's very young. It could happen someday if the progressive movement started to come back.
I don't see any Democrat out there who commands a lot of popularity, to be perfectly honest with you, Arlen. And I think the problem she would face is that real progressives like myself view her as a faux-gressive, if you will, and people who may not be paying as much attention fear she's far too to the left. She's too far to the left. And she is on identity politics. I mean, that's a big deal for her. But when it comes to taking on corporate elites, that's where she's fallen down, in my opinion.
Yeah, she's got a long way to go, and she is, like I say, if there is some movement in toward the left, the more progressive movement on the Democratic side, that would be great. Oh, one other thing I was going to say too is, as far as other Democrats who would have a chance, who stand out, I think most of them are just having to kind of stay in the background because Biden is the one that is running, and nobody wants to take away from him. So, maybe, once the election is over, I think you might see some people who show some interest in becoming president on the Democratic side. At least I sure hope so.
Well, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think right now, you don't want to take away the thunder, the glory, whatever word you want to use, that the president might command, and certainly they don't want to distract from him. Are you worried, Arlen, and we'll get to that, Trump's trial can right or wrong from 50 years ago, but are you worried what we're seeing some hand-wringing, certainly among Democratic apparatchiks, that the campus movements and the pro-peace movements and the pro-Palestine movements could really hurt Biden if there's action at the Chicago convention?
Well, there is that possibility, and I would worry about that because, again, the Republicans are going to say, "Oh, it's the Democrats' fault. They're the ones that are pushing all this, revolutionary stuff on campuses." So it's not a good thing. But I think by the time November comes around, I don't think this will be a big issue. I don't think it's going to last that long.
Oh, I don't know if I agree with you there. The George Washington students who are camped out right now in downtown D.C. say they're going to be there all summer. And I think they're committed to being there all summer. So that would be right in the middle of the convention.
Well, a lot of students are saying things like that, but then when the campus comes along and clears the tents and makes sure that they can't come back, then you have a different story. And that's happened on several universities.
Yeah, but they keep coming back. The students keep coming back, A, and B, at least on some campuses, and GW is one of them, the police have said they're not going to support the administration's efforts. As long as the protesters are nonviolent, they will not clear them out.
Of course, a lot of it depends on what's going on in the Gaza situation. If that is resolved in the next few months, then they won't have any reason to be demonstrating and occupying and all that. But, it's all unclear right now because we don't know what's going to happen.
I agree with that, but I'm just making the point. I see this as a definite cloud on the horizon for those who are, all in for Biden to get reelected. I'm not. I'm not at all. In fact, I hope there, are very big scenes, and I hope that the Democratic Party is really forced to confront. I'm sure it won't, because remember what they did with Bernie Bernie supporters in 2016, they put all these trash vehicles around the convention site in Philadelphia so that the Bernie folks couldn't be heard inside the convention, and they pushed the Bernie people off to into the corner. It was a really anti-democratic move by the party. I'm sure they'll do exactly the same thing in Chicago with the police. You probably won't see riots in the streets. Now you might, but I don't see any change. I don't see the Democratic Party will ever change unless they're voted out, or they're truly fear that if they don't change, they will lose what power and influence they have. So,
well, and I think Joe Biden, has a lot of pressure right now to do something about Netanyahu and the right word, and all the killing of innocent civilians, and I can't believe he's just going to sit there and give Netanyahu whatever he wants. I think at some point he's going to have to say, hey, we're going to stop sending you money and weapons if you don't, change your tune a little bit. So
hasn't done that yet, Arlen. We've got 35,000 dead Gazans and more. We've got rioting by Israelis on the West Bank. The crackdowns on campus have been accompanied by riots by pro-Israel. We saw that in UCLA. The pro-Israel counter-demonstrators ran riot through the encampment while the Los Angeles Police Department stayed out of it until the Israeli, the Zionists left, and then the police moved in and started cracking more skulls. So I don't see any reason to think Biden's going to change.
Well, I think he might. He'll have to, he has to think about political pressure and think about his popularity. And if he knows if he, sticks the same position he's in now, that he's, it's not going to help him. It's probably going to hurt him. So he's going to have to, at least compromise a bit and say, hey, we're going to just withdraw some of our gifts of money and weapons, to
I think, though, to be fair, though, to Biden, I don't think he would say, I don't know that his advisors are saying to him, well, you need to change your policy. I think they're probably saying to him, if you did, if it was perceived that you were letting the students and the protesters modify our policy, you would look weak. And not only that, yes, there are a lot of student votes, but let's face it, kids don't vote most of the time. You're now leading in the polls. And if you really came out and made a strong statement in support of Gaza, you would lose a lot of Jewish votes. And they do vote. And not only do those Jews vote, but they also give a lot of money. And you would lose that critical support. And also, guess what? They have a lot of influence over the media. So anything you did that indicated any reduction or lessening of commitment to Israel could really, really hurt you.
Well, that depends on conditions, that are going on there. Right now, they're trying to negotiate some kind of a truce. And if that doesn't work out and Israel goes into, more offensive activities and kills more civilians, then, Biden can't just sit there and let it happen without responding. So
I'd hope that. I just don't know that we'll maybe. I agree with that in principle, but I don't know that he would change except have more rhetoric, more hand wringing, instead of actual policy different change. And then why should he if AOC's out there supporting him anyway? He'd be like, hey, I'm getting the votes, the progressive vote anyway.
I think you're exaggerating, but I don't think she's really supporting him or agreeing with him, but she's not willing to get rid of Biden. That's all. She's going to keep herself within the mainstream of the party to some extent, but her opinions are still much to the left of Biden.
Yeah, I was just looking for when you said that you thought I was exaggerating with AOC. I don't think so. I don't think so. She, the headlines strongly suggest, and that's what I was looking for to just post there because, and I played this clip maybe the other day on the program, but if you look at what they're saying in media, she's all in. She's not asking for anything from Biden. She's not demanding any policy changes. She's just like, yeah, I'm for Joe.
I think I remember her using the word genocide, and that's something that Biden certainly wouldn't.
Well, she finally sort of said it, but it was like she really had no choice. And it was, I'd have to go back and look and get that exact quote, but even if she did say it, I don't see really, Arlen, she may have said that. She might say, yeah, we don't agree 100% on that issue, but she's not holding his feet to the fire in any real meaningful way.
Yeah, she's also not exactly a Biden person. I mean, she is to the left. She's to the progressive. She's in the progressive wing of the party, and I just don't see her being all in for Biden.
Let me see if I just want to show you this headline real quick, and then we'll let it go. But this is from The Hill. I think they're pretty reliable on politics. So, Ocasio-Cortez emerges as key Biden surrogate for progressives, young people, April 24. So she is there for him. I mean,
well, she wants him to win. Obviously, she doesn't want Trump to win. So she has really no real choices because it's going to be Biden versus Trump. So she'd rather see Biden in there, and who can blame her?
But you don't see Ilhan Omar or Tlaib or some of the other squad members out there for Biden. They're saying, no, we can't do this. And she's not, and AOC isn't. So it is political calculation on her part. And I think she's not using what leverage she might have to demand a change in the policies that the administration is pursuing with respect to Israel. I don't think if she tried to do that, she would be successful. I think if she tried to do that, they would say, well, we can't do that for you. That's something we're not going to change. And if I were she, I hope what I would do is I would go on TV. I would go on the Sunday news show and say, I support Jill Stein for president. That's what I would do.
Well, she's not going to do that. She wants to stay somewhat within the mainstream of the Democratic Party. And if she ever wants to run for president someday or a higher office, she's going to have to do that.
Well, isn't that the problem, though? Just like you said, you can't take on the party if you're in the party, if you ever want to become the leader. If you ever want to be able to drive policy, you can't ever take on the party. And once you do get into a position where you can drive policy, we find that you don't change it, or you change it for the worse, the way the Clintons did, the way the Obamas did, and the way Biden to a degree has done, although perhaps not to the same degree.
Well, certainly, the Democratic Party has their establishment, and they're hard to beat, like what they did to Bernie. And then we talked about Howard Dean earlier, and how just because he made a funny kind of cry or yell, that he was pretty much taken off the map of possibilities for president. I mean, they're going to find ways to get rid of progressives, and they're going to usually, as they often do and usually do, stick with the more moderate
or convert progressives or co-opt them. Nancy Pelosi had been a pretty progressive congresswoman in her first couple terms, I believe.
Yeah. Well, but then she had a powerful office where she couldn't do exactly what she would like to do, maybe, and she had to be with the Democratic establishment. So it's politics.
Yeah. So what's the wrong, Arlen, that the Trump trial can right?
Well, if we have something really happen, like in the trial that he's in now, and he has to have consequences, I think that'll be important, because when it came to Nixon, which is what the article was talking about, Nixon never went to trial. He wasn't impeached. He wasn't in that kind of position. Gerald Ford just pardoned him, and he never had to face the consequences. So I think this writer is hoping that Trump will have to face actual consequences based on his crimes.
Yeah, I mean, here's my skepticism, and I'm going to get this quote up because I put it there. Yeah, let me see if I can. Let me get the whole thing up because I don't want to have it. I think the problem we have is we're more divided. The writer makes a good point that in by 74, the American public, the great majority of Americans had turned against Richard Nixon. And they thought he was one of the worst people in the world. I mean, I think he was one of the most feared people, according to a Time survey then. That's not where we are with Trump. With Trump, he's loved and hated. He's feared and adored, and almost in equal measure. So wouldn't a trial, rather than uniting people, because I think that's the goal, right? That's what he's trying to say, that the people don't trust the American justice system now. They're skeptical of it. They believe it's corrupt. They believe that people with power, money, influence get away with murder, literally. I mean, what happened to Epstein, right? I mean, does anyone really believe he somehow managed to kill himself in that jail cell in Rikers Island while the prison guards all were falling asleep and the video camera just conveniently was turned off? I mean, the rich, powerful, influential are getting away with murder. I don't know how holding Trump liable in this case would change anyone's view of that.
Well, you know, in another, I was hoping we get to what Bill Maher was talking about on his.
I got that queued up too, Arlen. I was going to go there next, so we'll go there and then we'll end the program with a discussion about Maher.
Okay,
but you shared with me this article too, right? This was one of your go-tos, I think. Was it not?
Yeah,
you sent me this link.
Talk about it because I thought it was a wonderful presentation to that, and he agreed exactly the way I do about how.
Are you talking about Maher, or are you talking about the Trump trial?
Well, it's all connected to the fact that Merrick Garland has been slow and delaying all the time, so that we're not going to get to see the big cases that we should be seeing in the more serious cases before the election is, in November. And the Democrats really blew it on this one. Their attorney general blew it. Biden blew it by appointing Merrick Garland, who's been pretty weak. It's sad that the only real case that's going to go on right now has to do with a porn star, rather than the official documents that Trump stole and tried to hide, and of course January 6th.
Yeah, I think the strongest. I've said this over and over. To me, the case that I think would be most likely to unite American people against Trump would be the Georgia case, where he clearly tried to subvert the lawful counting and reporting of the election results there. I think that's the best, strongest case. It's the most serious charge in my view. It's the one that's least subject to various interpretations.
Well, all of those.
Although I agree that the document case is strong too.
Yeah, they're all important, but they're not going to be gotten to because the Democrats and Merrick Garland just played it so poorly that they've allowed Trump and his lawyers to delay everything until, November election, and then it's not going to matter.
All right, let's get to the Maher clip. You mentioned that, and we'll exit. I got a couple of clips from Bill Maher. I didn't do the Inside Edition with Trump, but that's fine. So, and yeah, it's funny because Maher has that dog on his imagery too, but it's not a cute little. There's a nasty little pit bull there, big pit bull there on the bottom right, and then a cute little puppy in the center. So I guess he's trying to. But his point is that Garland isn't the pit bull, and that's what he wanted. Let's see if we can get that video up for folks, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So,
Garland never even got a hearing. So when Biden got elected, the Democrats said, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny as payback if we gave Garland the Attorney General job?" And that's how we got Attorney General Barney Fife. A man who
Arlen, I guess you find that amusing too. I see you smiling in the background and like the picture too of Garland.
Well, you look at Merrick Garland, he even looks like he's not an aggressive attorney general. He doesn't look that strong. He looks kind of weak, and he's in his job, he's been very weak. Another thing I thought was really fascinating that Bill Maher had talked about, when it comes to special prosecutors, that when it comes to the Republican Party, they're always going to choose Republican special prosecutors, and when the Democrats have something going, they also choose Republican.
Well, let's play. I'll play more of that. I do have that as well, Arlen. So let's go.
Minimizes the strange stupor that comes over Democrats whenever they have to choose a top lawman. They worry so much about appearing nonpartisan, they get behind someone who lets actual crimes go unpunished. 5 years ago in this space, I was tearing Robert Mueller a new one. Remember him, the straight arrow Republican all the Democrats thought would hold Trump accountable for colluding with Russia? But with Mueller, as with Garland now, when we needed a pit bull, we got a purse dog.
So that's where he talks about the pit bull and the purse dog. And there is also a discussion, I didn't have it in this clip, but in the other one, Arlen, where he brings up the point that for whatever reason, Democrats appoint Republicans to investigate Republicans. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I think it's so hyper-partisan now that, let me say it this way. I'll just give you my take, and then I want your response. I don't think the American people care about this. I think what the American people care about is they care about jobs. They care about having enough to eat. They care about healthcare and education. They don't want their kids or their spouses going off to fight in foreign wars. And I think all of this is considered a distraction by many, many people.
But I think it's important too. People often go by, their impressions, their feelings, and if they see Donald Trump looking like the crazy idiot that he is, I think it's going to hurt Trump and it'll help Biden. So,
I agree with you. I absolutely do agree with, and I think this is hurting Trump, and I think it likely will cost him. Well, I don't know that he would have won anyway, but I think it's certainly not. It's certainly going to hurt him, and he probably will lose, and this may be part of the reason. But I'm just saying what I want to see Democrats do is what they'll never do, which is fight for the American people.
Yeah, well, we agree with that, Hal. The Democrats don't go nearly far enough to doing that, but at least they do something. The Republicans don't even do anything. Biden at least tries to get some things done in past, and he has gotten things done. But the Republicans have no interest in doing anything other than just destroying the Democratic Party.
All right, well, I will not push back on that, but I will play more from Marr. I'll let you get your final thoughts on Marr, since I know you're a fan, and we'll go from there.
It's so interesting. When it comes time for Republicans to appoint a special prosecutor, they always appoint a Republican. And when it comes time for Democrats to appoint one, they also appoint a Republican. A Democrat hasn't served as a special prosecutor in a major investigation since Watergate. Somehow the rule became it has to be a Republican or it's not fair. A Dudley Do-Right type, like Mueller or James Comey. Remember him? A Boy Scout, they said. Yeah, he was a Boy Scout, all right. He gave me a knot in the stomach.
Yeah, I didn't think that was funny. I saw you laugh. That joke did not work for me, but okay. I got it. I mean, I got what he was saying, but the knots, Boy Scouts tie knots. I don't know. It just didn't work for me, but his audience and you liked it, so.
Because he threw the presidency to Trump by making a big announcement 11 days before the election that he was reopening the case into Hillary's emails, and then found nothing. But the FBI was also investigating the Trump campaign's constant contacts with Russian nationals at the same time, over 140 of them. But that he kept secret. Weird.
And I'm going to stop it there. I think it's a fair point that, the October surprise was the investigation into Anthony Weiner's laptop. I mean, no question. Comey really, it really wasn't even big news, right? It wasn't a big deal, and he made such a big deal about it. I think the Russian stuff is just a pure distraction. That there's no charge against Trump for colluding with Russia or conspiring with Russia, because the investigation revealed there was nothing he had done that he could be charged with. But the Comey email story is Marr's got a good point. I agree with that.
I don't think that Comey was, trying to change the election or have any influence on it, but that's just the way it turned out.
Why would you do it though? Why would he have doesn't? I mean, that
Well, he explains it like he felt he had to because, if history would look poorly upon him if he didn't at least mention it, if that's what he was actually doing. But it was only all one-sided. It was all against Hillary, and it was about emails, and that was Trump's favorite subject about Hillary was her emails. So
Well, she really brought it on herself. I mean, the fact is, and I did a lot of investigation into this at the time, she did violate the rules in government at the time with respect to that server. Her obligation was to maintain the emails on government servers, and she didn't. She put them on her. She could use her Hillary at Gmail account if she wanted. That's fine. She doesn't need to use a government email address. She does need to keep the emails on her government server, and she took them home with her. So that's violating government records access as just as Trump did. And now I think what he did was worse, but she did the same thing. She had those records in her house in a server in her basement. That's not appropriate.
Yeah, it was wrong, and she made a mistake, but I don't think it's that huge of an issue. Nothing like.
Well, she lied about it too, Arlen. She kept lying about it. She kept saying, "Oh, I was told to, Colin Powell said to do it," and she never gets it. She was an awful candidate. I mean, can't we just admit she was horrible? She was so bad that people voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah, that tells you a lot right there. No, she was unpopular among a lot of people, and it didn't help that Trump kept hammering her all the time, like lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. When I don't think she did anything that terrible that she should be in prison. So that's just the way Trump does elections, and it worked for him in 2016. And yeah, Hillary was not the ideal candidate, but Trump was the winner.
All right, final words. Arlen, you can talk about Marr. We showed the whole clip there. I thought he made some fair points. Absolutely. Anything you want to point? We didn't get to tax the billionaires. See, that's what we should be doing. That's where we should be focusing our attention as a country. It's on taking from the rich and giving to the poor.
Well, that's an ongoing issue, and I will always be able to talk about that. But some of the things going on now, like with I think Joe Biden has to take some blame for appointing Merrick Garland. I think Garland has to account for what he's done and what he hasn't done, and he's obviously hasn't done enough. And there's just a lot of mistakes that were made by the Democrats, and they're paying a price. But like I said, I think we may have turned a corner, and I think Biden might be able to make it all the way till November. We'll see. It's going to be a long 6 months.
All right, you've been watching Halitics. That's Arlen. I'm Hal. Great to talk to you. Arlen will be back in a week. I'll be back tomorrow for more Halitics. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe.
Okay, thank you.